These people have come to your home to experience what you've got on offer. The best you can do is do the best you can and hope that they appreciate it. And if there's a little bit of angst in there, you fix it.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. We've had some pretty legendary people on Deep in the Weeds, and some have huge profiles in the media, while others have let their influence create ripples for generations without seeking the limelight. It is an absolute joy to welcome an integral part of the culinary evolution of Australia, Margie Harris. How are you?
Good, Anthony. Thanks for having me.
You've had an incredible impact over generations on the culinary landscape. How does that feel to sort of know that the impact that you've had in different cities and continue to do that?
Seriously, it's only until you asked me to do this that I've actually documented, pretty roughly, I might add. But my time in Adelaide growing up, my time in Adelaide in restaurants, the absolute draw to Sydney, and then, 30 years in Sydney, and now still having stuff to say and do where we live on the Northern Rivers in New South Wales.
Well, I can't wait to take a dive into it all, because it's just been amazing. But I might start it off. You've just done a pop-up actually in Sydney. How was that, and what did you do?
Okay, so it was a Paramount collab with Cho San, our old site. So after, 8 years in Paramount, the boys at Cho, about 5 years, we've done 5 now in a row. And we always do it around Mardi Gras because that was a big part of our clientele back in the 90s, still is. But also too, all our old customers from the 90s and the early noughties, some of them are still around and came. So we do this, we did a collab, and Chrissie goes into the kitchen with the team and they cook up a storm, and I run the floor with the Cho team. And as I said, 5th year this year, fantastic. 2 sold out nights, crazy, 2 sittings. But it was just like I was home. I own that room, Anthony, and they know it.
I could imagine. And I know we're going to talk about how you sort of stepped away from hospitality and also dive back in and out in a little while. But, what's the draw for you, like doing these things? Like what impact does it have on you doing these pop-ups?
Oh, it's, look, Chris loves it because she still cooks, quite a lot. For me, it's an opportunity to do what I used to do. And to be quite honest, I'm a people person, Anthony, always have been, still are. I connect with people. So part of looking after people in the restaurant situation was feeding them, keeping them amused and happy. So yeah, it's a bit of a pat on the back, I think, and a little bit of self-affirmation, which is sort of nice when you get old, It's lovely. Yeah, I really enjoy it. It kills my feet. I had to go horizontal for, a good 12 hours after the nights on the floor. But yeah, it was great.
Amazing. Well, there's so much to talk about, and you alluded to Adelaide, but take us back to when you were young. Like, was food really important to your family? What sort of role did it play for you as a kid?
I grew up in a really beautiful family, my mum and dad and 5 kids. I'm a middle child, so I probably suffered that middle child syndrome a little bit. And you can take that how you like. A bit of an attention seeker, but beautiful family. Mum was one of the best home cooks. Not great, and after she met Chris, she learned a bit more. But I've got 2 sisters that are chefs. I was the odd one out of the girls. I can't cook and haven't needed to since 1978. That'll become clear later. But Mum was the cakes and biscuits. And as a result, I have been a sweet tooth all my life. Chris is savoury, I'm sweet.
Was there any sort of particular thing that your mum made that you can tell us about that you look back fondly on?
Chocolate cake, chocolate biscuits, anything chocolate basically.
It's amazing that your sisters became chefs, but that's not a direction you took, but hospitality is. Like, when did you sort of first think about that as a potential career?
Chris and I met in 1978, so we're coming up for 50 years together. When we met, Chris was a fantastic cook. I had already decided that I wasn't any good at it, but I was only 20 at the time, so, it was early days. And we're in Adelaide, and Philip Searle had just opened Possums in North Adelaide. I went and worked on the floor there while I was supposedly at uni, which I sort of missed a fair bit. So I started working in Possums on the floor there. Chrissie started cooking at Petaluma up with Kath Carey in the Adelaide Hills. I worked on the floor there. I also worked on the floor at Globo's, a restaurant in Adelaide back in the 80s, in the early 80s. So we both got a bit of a feel for working for other people, and I realised that I was actually quite good at it, and I enjoyed it so much it didn't feel like work. I also worked at the Adelaide Central Market in the first organic fruit and vegetable stall there, with a woman called Anna Guthlieb, and it was called Stall 52. So back in the early 80s, I was working at the market by day, missing uni by day, and working on the floor in restaurants in Adelaide by night. So that's how it all started.
That's amazing. You and Chrissie had a huge influence, and actually that pool of people in Adelaide at that time were integral in the direction that Australia took.
Yeah, Chong, Philip. There was some great talent there. But the unfortunate thing, and it's not unfortunate, it's just, we were on to the bigger picture for us, and the draw was in 1988 after we'd been at Petaluma and a few other places. It was time to go, and we actually thought we could do this, but we also wanted to go to Sydney and work. Chrissie wanted to work with Philip, and I was happy to work with anybody that, would take me on, basically. And that happened to be, Macleay Street Bistro. That was my first on-the-floor job, and it was rocking. We're talking 1988. It was, it was Bistro, the restaurant, Bistro in Sydney. Mark Armstrong. I then went over and became the manager at Armstrong's in North Sydney, and Chris was at Oasis with Philip. So we were getting our foot in the door in Sydney with all care and no responsibility. And, it was their money, not ours, and we were making it. And we thought, I think after a period of time, I reckon we can do this. Let's give it a crack.
Well, before we get into that, what was life like for you just generally compared to living in Adelaide and moving to Sydney? Was it a big change for you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And we had no idea we used to go there occasionally for a visit and stuff. And we'd been together 10 years by that stage. So we were traveling overseas, and I'll talk more about that later. When you're in Australia back in the 80s, it was like, let's get out of here, so London, Paris, food places, we would always go, every year, sometimes twice a year if we could afford it. Because Chris was a school teacher, school holidays or plenty of them. The only thing that was lacking was money. So we would scrimp and save so we could get overseas and go to Paris and go to the, Michelin-starred restaurants. So back to leaving Adelaide, Sydney was the obvious choice, at least to start with anyway. It was the big smoke, still is.
Yeah. Well, you'd go on to have a huge impact on Sydney, but, you sort of started to talk about the embryo of creating your own venue. What was it like actually finding a site, getting enough money, and creating it? Was it a challenging time?
It was, but, I wouldn't want to do it now. I think it was a lot easier back then. We didn't need as much money as you would think. We employed Burley, Caton and Halliday, the on-point designers at the time. So we went straight to the top. We weren't going to mess around with a little pissy place that wasn't going to attract. We're in the main street of Potts Point, Macleay Street. We had the best designers in Sydney. Chris's food was cutting edge, even back then, it always was, always will be. And so we had the look, we had the location, we had the chef, and, we had me. And then we had the team that started with us at Paramount in 1992, stayed with us until we closed it in the beginning of 2001 after the Olympics. Same team. So that's testament. I mean, a couple of the chefs came and went because they were from overseas, but the team, Peter and Nigel, were our floor managers, all the bar boys and girls. It was a family, and I'll talk more about small independent restaurants a bit later, but we were that. That's exactly what we were.
Well, what do you think it was about Paramount that was so influential? Like, what was it that it made such an impact? What do you think it was about it?
Time and place. And those two things are really important for anything: right time, right place, right people. And Sydney was looking for stuff that was outside the box a little bit. McClay Street Bistro next door was still rocking it, but Sydney's a big city. There was room for more. And Mark Armstrong over at North Sydney, that was a great brasserie. Bayswater Brasserie was down the road. There were some great places, and Oasis. So Chrissie and I were going down the Oasis Road, owned by two people, bit cutting edge, bit edgy, bit off the radar a little bit, and that's why it worked.
Yeah, and the restaurant world was very different back then, and I love that you brought up small independent restaurants, considering the landscape now. Tell us a little bit about then and now and how different that is in regards to small independents and the challenges.
I think it changed, Anthony, after the Olympics, when money became a big factor in restaurants and corporations started to, put their finger in the pie, so to speak. Even now, Chris and I support privately owned, operated little restaurants, and there's a plethora of them all over Australia, which is great. We steer clear from the corporates and the group organisations. And look, there's lots has been said that I don't need to necessarily repeat, but they're not our theme. Look, there's some great food coming in and out of those, and great chefs and team members, but they don't have the heart and soul that small owner-operator restaurants do, among other things. Yeah.
Looking back on Paramount, what was sort of the biggest adversity and triumphs for you personally with that?
Not many adversities, to be quite honest. No, really, it wasn't. It didn't feel like work. It was, and I know we long hours every day, all that, and I probably, because time has lessened the pain. I loved it. We both loved it. It really it made us shine. But it was the people we met, our customers. I mean, apart from the locals and those that came from interstate and stuff, I've got a list here that I just had a look at of the people that came through Paramount and the stories that are as a result of that. And Chris and I still smile, and we've made an enormous amount of friends, globally as a result of that, not to mention, all our Sydney, Adelaide, Melbourne, everywhere, all our friends that supported us then. But the famous ones, it's over 50 when I started writing them all out. And we're talking, global movie stars, musicians, the whole lot. And, other restaurants in Sydney got to talk to Neil Perry anytime, and his list will be, heaps longer than ours. But whenever they came to Sydney in the 90s and the early noughties, they came to us. It was great. I loved it. I got photos with Annie Lennox and Keith Richards and all that sort of. I used to run home. It was before phones. So I used to run home and get my camera. Luckily, I lived just down the road, and I said, you're not going anywhere until I get back with my camera. It's hilarious.
You guys really captured the essence of what it was like to walk into a venue and be swept up into it for that period of time. How do sort of young operators create that? Like, how do you create that in a restaurant?
I think you have to have the personality to start with, and there's some great floor people in Sydney at the moment. But you've got to want to be there. You've got to believe in the product, and you've got to like people. I'm a real, always been a people's person, even post and pre and post hospitality. I was the one that sort of got the party started, so to speak. Last woman standing. Yes,
this I know. You mentioned about Paramount closing in 2001. Tell us about that. How did that happen, and what was it like for you?
Yeah, good question. The restaurant industry started to change a little bit. I think we're a little bit burnt out. So there goes to show how hard it was to do it. I think we're a little bit burnt out. The industry was changing. There was nothing like rent going up or anything like that. I think Chrissie and I, we're both change makers, and we weren't going to be there for 20 years, as much as we loved it. We both liked doing different things. And so it just morphed, actually. After the Olympics, things quietened down in Sydney a little bit, and things were starting to change. And we weren't sure that we wanted to be part of that change. We wanted to make our own changes and be the leaders of that, and as opposed to being put out of business, or we decided to let's change. It's time to move on. Yeah.
That's a harder thing to do than, that's something people would think of doing, but actually biting the bullet and, being the driver of change for yourself. How did you do that? How do you approach that?
It's a hard one because as you said, a lot of people would, we've got friends that are in the industry who say, we want your life. And we just say, Neil, you can.
Yeah.
You just got to let it go, mate. I love him dearly. But yeah, we had to drive that change, and we're really incredibly positive. Chris is incredibly positive. She's the most positive person I know. So we just said, let's do something different, and as it's turned out, we had no idea what it was, but we never did. Things come up when you open yourself to new things.
Tell us about your sort of move away from the industry and what you immersed yourself into with this change.
As a result of the closing of Paramount, Chris wasn't going anywhere as far as her career was concerned. In fact, she was just going to escalate it. I didn't want to go stay in hospitality and work for somebody else. So it sort of somehow I started getting into work-wise. I just gave myself a bit of a year off. And in that year off, I went and did my Cert 3 and Cert 4 in personal training. I had a trainer at the time, 2001, and I had a personal trainer, and I was quite enjoying doing that. So I ended up becoming a personal trainer. So when Chrissie opened Universal a few years later, this is after her London restaurant, we had this thing that they'd go to Chris to get fat and they'd come to me to get fit. So it was a win-win situation. So I trained heaps of Universal clients, and they're still friends today. So I moved into the health industry, so to speak. Yeah.
Amazing. Were there skills that you learned from hospitality that helped you in that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, I was the boss, and they did what they were told. Or else they'd be there longer and they'd lift heavier, or they'd stay on the treadmill longer. So it was one of those. No, I was a natural, I really was. And at the same time, my own health, I gave up drinking. Being in hospitality, it's easy to get a likening for alcohol, and I loved it. But I decided in 2002, when I was in the middle of my getting healthy and becoming a PT, decided to give it a break for a month. Well, that was 22 years ago. Yeah, no, so I haven't had a drink in 22 years.
Yeah, that is so amazing. So I really wanted to ask you about, riding that wave of hospitality where it's alcohol and rich food and amazing food, but mental fitness and physical fitness, and often they don't combine. So how have you balanced those worlds together?
Well, back then they didn't combine. There was no such thing as PTs in the late 80s, early 90s. And look at it now; it's absolutely thriving industry. But at the time, it was really hard. That was probably if you ask about challenges, the challenge was staying on top of being healthy and not getting overweight or not drinking too much. And of course, I'd give drinks away, and one for you, one for me. And if you do that 10 times in a service, I was pickled. And then there's knockoff drinks with the staff. I mean, what chance did I have? So yeah, and this was all before Feb Fast or Dry July. This was way before that. Yeah, so I just made a decision, and I'm not really good at sort of following through with things, but it made me feel better, and obviously propelled my health career. Without a doubt. Yeah. People say now I don't need alcohol, so
Yeah, that's right. You and Chrissie are sort of renowned for traveling the globe and immersing yourself in different cultures. You've probably got a million stories of influence on those journeys. Do you have a couple that you can share with us that have made a profound impact on you?
Oh, I think we got together in 1978. The first overseas holiday we had together was 1979, and we went to Paris and London, and we chased a couple of Michelin star restaurants. Joel Robuchon. There's a couple. I mean, basically, if they had 2 or 3 stars, we would go broke to go and eat there. So the first few years of travel, even while Chrissie was still a school teacher and before we owned our own restaurants, that's what we were doing. And then as soon as we got our own restaurants, well, then we'd go and visit our mates in London and in Paris. the cafe, River Cafe. Been a fave for decades, and we love the two girls that run it. And a Nigella, great mate. We'd go saw her in London a couple of months ago. We'd go out to River Cafe for lunch together. Yotam Motalingi, he was here in Australia a couple of weeks ago. We caught up with him in Brisbane and went to Marty Boats's short grain. Yeah, so stuff like that. It's about friendships and collaborations, Anthony. I mean, I can't think of an industry other than hospitality that brings people together more, in such a nurturing and caring way.
On your travels, is there a cuisine or culture that's really had an impact on you? And
I'm a bit of a follower. What Chris likes, I'll like. Although, having said that, I'm one of the fussiest eaters in the world. But Asian food, definitely Japanese, Thai, Chinese. Yeah. So after the European sort of, when we got a bit sick of that, then Asia, obviously, because it was a hop, skip and a jump. So we'd go to Japan and to Bangkok and, go to the restaurants there as well, which has obviously, influenced Chrissie in a lot of the stuff that she does too. I mean, she no holds barred with Chris. If it's a food she likes, she'll find a way to, meander it into her menus and stuff, which is what she did with the boys and girls at Chocho last week. There was no one, we didn't go down Japanese road or down Chrissie's road. They created a menu together that sort of touched quite a few, sort of continents. People love it.
Yeah, absolutely. For young people in the industry looking to sort of capture that, like what advice would you have about traveling and food for them? Like what would be the best benefit?
Look, again, Anthony, things have changed a lot. Chris and I now travel as much, if not more, within Australia than out. Yeah, we do an overseas trip at least once or twice a year, but probably since we've lived up here, which is, 6 years and a few years that before in Sydney, was discovering our own backyard. And it is in a beautiful backyard that we have. The countries that we visited, the food of First Nations people. We've got a beautiful country. And so we are big on exploring our own backyard. And so I would say to any young people, know where you come from first, and then by all means go and explore all of it. We did it in reverse because it just wasn't available to us, 30 years ago. It is now. And there's some amazing stuff happening in every country, town, every, a river, ocean, desert. There's stuff everywhere. So that would be my advice.
You and Chrissie, as you've mentioned, have been together for a long time and worked together on many things. What's it like trying to balance that life and work together? Like, how do you guys work together?
Oh, we're really good at it. I mean, she's bossy and so am I. And at times at Paramount, there was the line from the kitchen to the floor. It was an imaginary line, but we knew not to cross it. No, look, I have 100% belief in what she does. Look, there's times when, it might go a bit wrong because something's a bit slow or they fucked up or I fucked up. No, we're the yin and the yang, Anthony. Both really bossy, both really strong-willed and strong-minded, but also both really caring and considerate of everybody else. I mean, if you talk to others, I think that used to work for me, they would say she was tough, but, I think I've been called a chocolate caramel, sort of crunchy on the outside, but soft in the middle. And that and one, I'd eat it, and two, that's me.
Well, you are actually also renowned as one of Australia's greatest front of house professionals. What advice would you have for young professionals looking to carve a career in the front of house? How should they approach it?
I think go and work for a few people first, people that you admire, watch, listen and learn. I mean, I have to thank Terry Durack and Jill Duplay for my Silver Service Award back in 1998. So best service in Sydney. Or that with great. I was very surprised and absolutely thrilled. But the trick was I got coined Tinkerbell on that night, and in that review she was like a fairy that sort of flits across the floor. So that's how Tinkerbell got her name, and I've lived with that. I became Tinkerbell PT after I moved into yeah, I know. But yeah, so look, it's consistency. It's people watching you look after people, and that's not saying do whatever they say, because I gave a few customers what for, the customer's not always right. But having said that, it's about caring for, these people have come to your home to experience what you've got on offer. The best you can do is do the best you can and hope that they appreciate it. And if there's a little bit of angst in there, you fix it one way. And it's not by, arguing or giving shit away. It's about, respect.
Yeah. As I sort of tabled at the top of the show, you've had such an influence on a couple of decades of Australian dining, helping to build the foundation of what we see today. What are you most proud of looking back of your life in food?
That Chrissie and I did it together, on a shoestring. But still, it didn't look like a shoestring. It was, one of the most gorgeous restaurants in Sydney, Paramount at the time. And then Chrissie went on to do Universal, which was equally colour. It was the opposite. Paramount was white or black and, this beautiful shining light. Universal, done by David Caton from BKH again, was just colour and movement, the reds, the oranges and all that. So, again, yin and yang. I just think that we were able to do it on our own with support of industry mates, customers, friends. And, Chris did a restaurant in London for 3 years, during the 2003 to 2006 or something like that. Chris was on a trajectory, that's for sure. As she was heading to London, I was doing the PT stuff. I went over there and did a bit of work with the team, but I was coming back and, sort of doing the opposite, getting fit and stuff. And then Universal. So, I think just the most proud thing was that we did it as a couple and we did it together. We did it successfully and happily.
Yeah, amazing. I know you mentioned that it's a yearly thing, the pop-up that you've just had. Is that something that we can still expect? And do you have other things on the horizon as well?
Oh, absolutely. We just did one we do them in every city. Chrissie did one with Marty Boats at Short Grain a couple of months ago. We're doing 2 at Yellow in Sydney for Vivid. So look out for that. Vivid, 2 nights at Yellow in Potts Point. Chrissie's going to a brewing kitchen in Tassie in about 3 weeks. We've just done Bundanon Art Gallery in New South Wales. So there's the really nice thing now at our age, and it's sort of the elders of the industry, is that we get to pick and choose. And the really lovely thing for Chris in particular is that she's sought out. She does say no to some things, but she cherry picks, and that's a real testament to how much she's valued in the industry by the old and the new. That she still gets invited, and she mentors loads of young chefs, which again is a really nice thing to have on your CV, is that they come to her and ask for her advice on stuff, and she's great at it. She was a school teacher, so she's a natural. That's the good part, is now that we can do it as again, all care and no responsibility sort of thing. It becomes, and it's a travel opportunity. We get to go to places.
Well, Margie, what an absolute joy to catch up with you again. It's been many years. I'd love to have you on the show again.
Let's not keep it this. I've got plenty more to tell you, Dole. There's so many things that I had on the list. So let's do this again.
I would love to catch up again, so please keep in touch.
Okay, we'll call it storytelling, all right? Yarn.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll catch up again soon. Thanks, Margie.
Thanks for having me.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Stay safe and be well.